Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timarandasya Ganandana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karana Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapcha Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Rishabhana Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So reading from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita as it is, translation and commentary Srila Prabhupada. Today's verse 16:24. 13:24. Okay, so please repeat. Ya evam vetti puruṣaṁ prakṛtim ca saha sarvathā vartamāno nasa bhūyo bhijāyate. So word for word. Ya, anyone who, evam, thus, vetti, understands, puruṣaṁ, the living entity, prakṛtim, material nature, cha, and guṇaiḥ, the modes of material nature, saha, with, sarvathā, in all ways, vartamāno, being situated, api, in spite of, na, never, saha, he, bhūyaḥ, again, abhijāyate, takes his birth. Translation Srila Prabhupada. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present condition. Please repeat. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present condition. Purport Srila Prabhupada. Clear understanding of the material nature, the supersoul, the individual soul, and their interrelation makes one eligible to become liberated and turn to the spiritual atmosphere without being forced to return to this material nature. This is the result of knowledge. The purpose of knowledge is to understand distinctly that the living entity has by chance fallen into this material existence. By his personal endeavor in association with authorities, spiritual saintly persons and a spiritual master, he has to understand his position and then revert to spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness by understanding Bhagavad-Gita as it is explained by the personality of Godhead. Then it is certain that he will never come again into this material existence. He will be transferred into the spiritual world for a blissful eternal life of knowledge. Makam karochi bhachalam bhangam laite girim yad kripa tamaham vande Shri Guru dinatarinam. Ya evam vetti puruṣaṁ prakṛtiṁ ca guṇaiḥ saha sarvathā vartamāno pi na sa bhūyo bhijāyate. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present condition. Yes, so I think it's the second sentence is there. This is the result of knowledge, right? So we've said many times, the Bhagavad-Gita is in 3 sections: karma, bhakti and jnana. But they're all interrelated and ultimately direct the living entity to bhakti. Karma or work is discussed in the first 6 chapters, but to do work is useless without devotion. At the beginning, Arjuna, he doesn't want to perform his duty as a Kshatriya. He wants, I don't want to do all this fighting and killing, especially with my family members. But no, Krishna says, you must do your duty, you must do your karma. You're a Kshatriya, you have duty. But then he, after convincing Arjuna in that way, he tells Arjuna, but you must do your duty as an offering to the Supreme. So this is the first stage of bhakti. We all have to work in this world, as Krishna says. You cannot maintain the material body without work. Even if you don't have a job, or you have to clean it, you have to go to bathroom, you have to feed it, you have to rest it. So this is a work. It is a duty. You have to maintain the body. However, if we just maintain the body for the sake of it, or we just work for the getting an income, and just because we have to work, then this is almost animal life, because we're not doing anything spiritual. The difference between the animal and the human is the spirituality. The human can understand and the Supreme Lord, and he can act to realize that Supreme Lord. So work in itself is useless, because the animals, the lions and the tigers and the elephants, the crocodiles, they're also working, right? But they're not going to attain bhakti. So if a human just works just for material result or material duty, then he remains practically the same as the animal in consciousness. So Krishna encourages Arjuna, okay, now you have your duty as a Kshatriya, but yajñātā kāmanonyatra, lokoyam karma bandhana. Work must be performed as an offering to Vishnu. Otherwise, work binds one to the material world. Yes, you're a very good doctor and you've helped many people, but you're still going to stay in the material world. You may be elevated, oh, you're a very good bank robber and you've stolen many banks, but you're still going to stay in the material world. Whether you're pious or impious, you're going to just get a material result. But if you can link your karma to the Supreme Lord, then you're starting your relationship with the Supreme Lord. And then you can, as Krishna explains here, then you can start to realize your spiritual nature directly and personally. So after encouraging Arjuna, then in the middle 6 chapters, he explains the opulences of the Supreme, what is the most secret knowledge, what is bhakti. He reveals the universal form, how everything is resting upon him. And then in the 12th chapter, devotional service is there, how to perform bhakti. So now, in these latter 6 chapters, the stress is jnana. But just gaining knowledge about the material nature, the laws of karma, so on and so forth, the interaction, that is also useless unless it is performed with bhakti. The jnani, 3 divisions in the Vedas, karma, jnana and bhakti. So the jnani, he's gathering knowledge, yes, he's looking at even the Vedas, what to speak of the atheistic material knowledge that's so pervasive nowadays in Kali Yuga. So he's studying the Vedas, but the general result will be that without devotion, he will come to impersonal ideas. He will consider, yes, this material nature, ultimately it is binding us to the cycle of birth and death. It is different from the soul. It cannot give satisfaction to the soul. Like Krishna says, dukkhalayam sashvatam. Everywhere is a place of misery in the material world, maybe greater misery or lesser misery, but there's always some discomfort. There's always some irritation, and sometimes there is very great discomfort. So, and asashvatam, it's all temporary. We love our children, we love the wife loves the husband, we love our country, but it's one lifetime. And it'll all change. Everything changes, we all know, right? Even a young man knows life changes. But as you get older, you know that when I was this, that was going on, now I'm in this condition. So, understanding that the material nature is not satisfactory and full of variety, the jnani tends to think that I'll go to a place where there's no variety. I'll become detached from this material world, and I'll gain moksha in that way. I'll merge into the Brahman. I'll merge into the Brahman energy. I'll merge into the Nirguna Nirvisesha Brahman. Nirguna means without quality. Nirvisesha means without variety. That's what I'll do. But of course, the Vaishnava Acharyas explain that yes, the Brahman or the spirit or the Supreme Spirit is Nirguna. Correct. But it means no material qualities. Here in this chapter, Krishna is explaining the material modes of nature, Trigunya, Sattva-gun, Rajagun, Tamagun, how they interact, and then the living entity trying to enjoy the modes of material nature gets caught up in action and reaction, and he becomes bound. So here, Krishna is explaining, if you have knowledge of the Absolute in a perfect sense, not just knowledge that this material world is temporary and unsatisfactory, But if you have knowledge of the variety of the spiritual world, because nirguna means no material qualities, and nirvisesh means no material variety. But we know from Srimad Bhagavatam and the explanations of the acharyas about the Vedas that the spiritual world is full of variety, even more than this material world. This material world, the variety is jada, it is material, it is dull, it is gross compared to the ecstatic condition of the spiritual world. So therefore, if we just gain spiritual knowledge and we cultivate, and this not only happens to the people who study the Vedas, but even the munis, the philosophers, right? In the Western tradition, maybe they don't study the Vedas or so on. So they sit down and they smoke a pipe and have a sip of some brandy, and they think, what is the source of all this? There must be some energy. There must be some state beyond misery. And the variety in this world and the activities in this world, which is full of conflict and selfishness, that it's absent there. And that is a place of pure light or pure consciousness, right? So it's easy to reject the variety that's unsatisfactory and kind of guess yourself into this. We're conscious beings, but we're in this material body. So we should meditate on the consciousness and become pure. So in this way. But when you say consciousness, supreme consciousness, consciousness is not floating around somewhere. This is what Krishna says at the end of the chapter. This consciousness of the living entity illumines the body, just like the sun illumines the universe. So consciousness has a source, just like the light here and the electric. It's all connected to the power station. So everything, consciousness, there is the supreme consciousness. So there is that famous sloka that Prabhupada always quoted, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Yoda Dadati Kaman. That out of all Nitya, eternal beings, there is one supreme, Nityanam. Chaitanas Chaitananam, out of all conscious beings, there is one supreme conscious being. And Prabhupada used to explain, of course we're conscious of this body, but I'm not conscious of your body or your mind. I can maybe have some intuition or something like that, or exercise psychic powers, but I can't feel in that base sense. Eko Yoda Dadati Kaman. And that one supreme person, that one supreme entity, who's supremely conscious, Yoda Dadati Kaman, he's fulfilling all the desires of the individual living entities. Just like, same example, there is a power station, and that power station is supplying the energy to all this lights and fans and air conditioners and so on. All the electrical devices are linked. So Krishna says, yes, Sutri Mana Gina, that everything is resting upon me just like pearls are strung upon a thread. So Krishna is the foundation. He's the core of existence. So here, the discussion is about particularly the super soul. And this chapter is related to how the material nature which is full of variety. The three modes mix, just like yellow, red and blue. You can mix those colors and you can get a whole variety of colors. And material nature is beginningless, the living entities are beginningless, and they are all interacting with the modes of material nature, but everything is resting upon the Supersoul. Just like all the beads on my Tulsi neck beads are resting upon the thread. Same thing. So that is supporting, that is the foundation. So the Supersoul also has a foundation, right? And that Supersoul has the foundation, ultimately Krishna. So we understand from the Bhagavatam Brahma Samhita how the Supersoul is manifest. And that is, we read in the Bhagavatam that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada makes point that He is the original, He is the origin. Original in the sense He's the origin of all the avatars, Nrsimhadev and Vishnu and so on. But His first expansion is Baladev. And Baladev is Guru. Guru Shakti, his wife Ananga Manjari is Guru Shakti. Baladev appears as Nityananda Prabhu and his wife Jahnavi is Guru Shakti in Chaitanya Leela. So then from Baladev is the Chatur expansion, Chatur Vyuha. And they are Vasudev, Shankarsan, Aniruddha, Pradyumna. So I was reading many years back, I was thinking, what are they doing, this Chatur Vyuha? And so I did research in the folio. And so there is 4 divisions, you can say, of life. And each one of them rests upon those. The first division are to do with consciousness. And that is that there is 3 actions of consciousness. The first is thinking or perception or beingness. Functional consciousness, where you're self-aware. And then the second one is feeling, where you assess what you're... Because we're not only just aware, but we're also interpreting what we're aware of. We're seeing, say, a sunset. So we're conscious, we're perceiving the sunset. But then we're looking at the sunset and we're thinking that's a very beautiful sunset. We're giving some evaluation, some interpretation. Correct? So thinking, feeling, and then willing. Sankalp, vikalp. And that means you determine to do something, or you decide you accept something, or vikalp, you reject it. Just like you're looking at the sunset, but you're thinking, oh, it's too hot, I've got to go inside. So you're thinking, you're perceiving the sunset, you're thinking, it's too hot, now I reject this situation. So the living entity, with his consciousness, he's perceiving, he's feeling the consciousness, he's interpreting the consciousness, and then he's deciding what to do. And then the fourth thing comes into its action. On the basis of that thinking, feeling, willing is action. Oh, it's too hot. Or it's very beautiful. I'll call the wife to bring me a lemon soda so I can sit here. Right? So, because I want to watch it, it's so beautiful, right? Thinking, feeling, willing, and then some action is performed. So, Sutri Mani Gana Iva, that is operating in the spiritual world also. The living entities, they are all angsa of Krishna, they're dependent parts. Mavavangsa Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. So they are like sparks, and Krishna is the fire. So the spark is not independent, it is an individual, but it is dependent upon the fire. So the ability to perceive, that is under the auspice of Vasudeva. And then the ability to feel is Shankarshan. That is governed by Shankarshan. And then the ability to decide is under Pradyumna. And then the ability to take action, put the thinking, feeling, willing into activity, is under Aniruddha. So that is how the spiritual world works. Krishna is expanded, everyone, just like the power station is expanded into the light and maintaining the ability of the light to distribute radiance. So the living entity, his ability to think, feel, will and perform action, decide action, it's all dependent upon the Supreme Lord. This is the methodology. This is what is talked about when Krishna says, this is knowledge. To understand that Vasudeva is Savamiti and that Krishna is Ashraya, he is the shelter of everything. Everything is resting, the whole is resting upon him. This is knowledge. Vasudeva Savamiti Sa Mahatma Sadurlabhaha. This is knowledge, that everything is Vasudeva and that everything is maintained by Vasudeva. So in the spiritual world, people are thinking, feeling, willing, desiring and performing activities, and it's all resting upon the Supreme. This is the methodology of the Supreme Lord. So then Shankarshan, they're maintaining the thinking, feeling, willing and action of the spiritual world. Then Shankarshan expands down into the material Chatuvyuha. They're entirely spiritual, but they do the same thing. They, in the material creation, there's the spiritual creation and the material creation. And in this secondary material creation, where people are forgetful of the Supreme Lord and they're trying to enjoy the material nature, and therefore they're covered by illusion because they don't see everything in relationship to the Supreme Lord. So their thinking, feeling and willing is also resting upon the grace or the potency of Vasudeva, Shankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha also. That's also resting on them. So then Shankarshan, he is the source of Lord Shiva. That second Chatuvyuha is also expanded from there, Lord Shiva. When you see the pictures of Lord Shiva and he's meditating upon his source, which he knows as Shankarshan, Vishnu. So anyway, so this second Chatuvyuha, then from Shankarshan is expanded Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu lies down upon Baladev. Baladev expands as Anantasesh within the Pradhan. And there, Mahavishnu, he enters Yoga Nidra and he expands as the Pradhan. The Pradhan. Which, just like in the spiritual world, Krishna is expanding as the Brahman effulgence, so in the Pradhan is expanded from Mahavishnu, and it is the Chit Shakti, but it has a special admixture called Tama. Tama means just Lord Krishna as Mahavishnu expanded from Shankarshan in the Chakra. He is in forgetfulness. He's in Yoga Nidra. Just like when we are as above, so below. So when we sleep, we also forget ourselves, do we not? Our consciousness. We might think, oh, I'm no longer such and such brahmachari in the ashram. I'm a king in Bengal. Or No, I'm in the jungle in Bengal and the tiger is chasing me. So we forget our gross condition and we go into a dream condition, right? So our consciousness is in tamas. It's in a lower state. It's even more illusory. When we're awake, we're dreaming I'm this body. But then when we go into sleep, we dream, oh, I'm chased by a tiger. I'm the king of Bengal the next moment. Or I'm flying in the sky. So on and so forth. So that pradhan, then Mahavishnu, he glances at the personification. Yoga Nidra, he is being massaged by Rama Devi. It's explained there in the Brahma Samhita. But this pradhan is embodied, the material creation is embodied in Durga Devi, who's expanded from the other side of Krishna, if you like. On one side, Krishna is expanding as Baladev, then on the other side he's expanding as Radharani. She's also called Durga. Durga means hard go. It's very hard or impossible to leave the spiritual world. So Durga in the material world also, she is the embodiment of the material nature. So Mahavishnu glances at Durga, and this glance is Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva and the time factor, the karma of the living entities, and the living entities themselves are impregnated into the womb of material nature. And this time factor, this disturbs the equilibrium in the pradhan, and out of this comes the material modes. Sattva means balance. Raja means activity. Tamagun means inertia. People, when they're tamasic, they feel very depressed or lacking energy. When they're rajasic, they're full of activity and sparking and so on. But when they're in sattva, they're balanced and their intelligence is more clear. They're able to understand philosophical matters. So Brahminical culture means the cultivation of sattva gun. Samodama tabasacham. So these three effects, by the arrangement of the Supreme, come out and they bear upon the, to put it simply, on the pradhan, and then they create the varieties in the material nature. So how can we understand that? You may have seen on the internet sometimes they have these plates, maybe half the size of this table. And on the plate they put some sand or some dust or chalk. Have you seen? And then they vibrate the plate at a certain frequency. You can look it up on the internet. And these plates, according to the frequency, will make a certain pattern. And if you turn the speed up or you turn down, the pattern on the plate will change. So the three modes, the Shakti of Mahavishnu, meditating, coming as the time factor, causes the pradhan to vibrate in certain ways. And according to the mixture of the vibrations, you get all the different combinations. So if you see something material on the gross plane, this is pradhan, but according to the sabda, the vibration or the frequency and the potency of the modes, it is in this condition. Do you understand? It is the gross manifestation of the pradhan acted on, which has been acted upon by the three modes. So everything, when people sometimes think the three modes, they think in the subtle sense. But these subtle energies act upon the pradhan to produce the gross variety. And this is all governed by Supersoul. This is the point. So where does Supersoul come in this? Mahavishnu is glancing at Durga Devi from the womb of the material nature, all the varieties and the universes. You can read second canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, for more details, and the earlier part of the Brahma Samhita. And throughout the Vedas there's discussion about this. And you can also read in the third canto teachings of Lord Kapila to Devahuti to understand how the material modes interact. Just like if you have a piano, if you play two notes, a certain second note or second sound will be created. If you play three notes harmoniously, then a chord is there. So this is how it is. All these different modes, they intermingle and they react with this pradhan that is emanating from Mahavishnu when he's in forgetfulness of his self. So therefore the material nature, it has the quality of making the living entity forgetful of his relationship with the Supreme Lord, because that is the Leela of Mahavishnu's Yoga Nidra. You have to contemplate this, and by grace of Guru and Krishna, you'll get realization more and more understanding. So, that is how, if we understand that and contemplate these ideas and get realization, then you will start to see the material world in that way. Now we've all been to school, and they told us perhaps something, there was a big bang, there was a, and then there was a big bang, and then things started to create consciousness, and then the consciousness created humans, and so on and so forth. That's how they're telling us in school. But the Bhagavatam tells us, no, the origin and the actual methodology of Krishna in creating this material nature. So from Mahavishnu, into each particular universe is expanded Garbhodakshai Vishnu. And each universe is like a shell. There's different layers. And within the shell, it's like a coconut with a very thick. And the first layer is, within is the earth, and the layer is water, then the layer of fire, and then the layer, and each layer is 10 times larger. There's not enough time to explain all the sizes, but this is how each universe, and each of these universes floats within the pradhan. So it's called the Karana Sumudra, the causal ocean. So Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and so everything is resting upon the Supreme Lord. You've understood that point. Everything is Sutri Mani Gana Iva. This is the actual methodology. So Mahavishnu expands as Garbhodakshai Vishnu within each universe, and expands, and the whole universal arrangement of the inner Garbhodak ocean and the open area and the different planetary systems and the different stars and the different lokas. There's 14 lokas going up from Bhuloka, we're Bhuloka, Bhuvarloka, Swargaloka, Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka. And then going down below, there is Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Mahatala, Rasatala, Patala, and then Narak, and also Pritriloka. There's so many. So Loka means region. Perhaps the English word location comes from Loka. It means region, area. So we're Bhumandala. Bhumandala means Bhu, the place where earth or the gross energy is more predominant. When you go up to Swargaloka and Satyaloka, it becomes more and more ethereal. The gross elements fade away, and it becomes more and therefore it becomes more heavenly, because the gross elements are very gross. Like, if you fall off your motorbike, it's very painful. But in the higher realms, they have subtle bodies, subtle forms, subtle ways of life, different. They don't get COVID-19 or vaccinations that make them sick or anything like that. And so below Bhumandala, these are the atheistic regions where the asuras and the rakshasas and the nagas and the yakshas and so many atheistically minded people live down there and so on, and it's all described in the different lokas. So then this is all resting upon Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And then from Garbhodakshaya Vishnu there's another expansion. From Garbhodakshaya Vishnu is Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. And Kshirodakshaya Vishnu is the super soul. And he expands into the heart of, or the soul of the soul. You understand? The heart of the soul. And then he is perceiving and maintaining the thinking, feeling, willing and action of all the living entities and their desires, how they want to enjoy the material nature. For example, in Swargaloka, they have subtle bodies and they want to enjoy the Nandanandan gardens, and the Apsaras are there, and the musicians and the Gandharvas are there, and it's all very heavenly and beautiful. And then if you go down to Sutala, at the moment we're informed Bali Maharaj is there, and it's very atheistic region. But Bali is a devotee, and there they have great technology, and they have uninterrupted material enjoyment in forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord. Whereas in the heavenly regions, they are devotees. They're having good karma and they're devoted. They're not atheistic. And so all these descriptions are there. So Rishikesh is within the heart of the soul, if you like. Because sometimes we see a painting and we see a spark like a soul, and we see a picture of, four-armed Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, Paramatma. And the previous verse says, he's the Upadrishta and Anumanta. He's the overseer and permitter. Upadrishta, upper seeing. He's seeing from his position above the material nature. You'll read here. He is seeing everything. He's the master of the material modes of material nature, but he's not under the material modes. And so he is giving the results of different karmas and arranging the fulfillment of different desires in a very kind of detached way. Just like he's watching, but he's not favoring samaham sarvabhuteshu, I'm equal to everyone, not dvesho, not priya. I'm just fulfilling their desires, guiding them according to their consciousness, maintaining their thinking, feeling and willing. But then there's that famous verse in the Upanishads where this super soul, he is within the living entity. So we see super soul here and so, but the living entity is resting upon. The soul of the soul is Paramatma. The soul is resting upon, because within everything is the Supreme Lord is woven within in his form as super soul, and he's emanating the Brahman, and he's energizing and maintaining the whole relationship. So this super soul, he is there within the heart, and he's governing the living entities. But then, just like I'm saying, those, however, who like to hear from authorities and Shastra, then, he's also within the tree of the body, and he's fulfilling the bird. There's another bird in the tree that's trying to enjoy the fruits of the tree. But the super soul is guiding that, enjoy this fruit, that fruit, on this branch, in this loka, that loka. But then he's waiting though for that bird. Why don't you turn to me and I'll educate you on the real perception of this world. Just like earlier, it's very interesting that Krishna says, Now I will tell you about the knowable. Do you remember that verse? The knowable. Because you see, the material world, nobody can really know. You understand? You investigate what is the power behind the politicians. Is it the bankers? Is it the secret service? Is it this? Is it that? You can never really, you can get some loose knowledge, but you can never really understand. In the same way that you can never really understand a dream, it's all kind of indistinct. But the Super Soul, the Supreme Lord, is knowable because He is reality. He is the source of this creation. He is factual. So that is the purpose of sadhana. And hearing, Shravanam Kirtanam. You hear from the Shastra, you hear from the Acharyas, the Sadhus, you hear from the Guru, and then you get, by grace of Super Soul, you get some idea. You get some conclusion, you get some insight. So Super Soul and ultimately Krishna becomes knowable. Shravanam, then Kirtanam. Then if you practice discussing maksita, makkata, prana, if you discuss the Super Soul and Krishna and how this material world is, then you become liberated because you're awakening from the illusory interpretation of the material world. We're living in the material world, and like I say, at this time everyone's being told there was a big bang. But then in some places they say the world was created in 7 days or something like this, or some idea. Or Thor banged his hammer and then the universe was created or something. They have different man-made ideas. So, because how did it all happen? It's natural. But the Vedas is the factual knowledge. This is what we say, Veda Pramana. This is the first point of the Vedas, that the Vedas are proof, they are knowledge. But one should perform sadhana. So having Shravanam, then we should perform Kirtanam. That means discussion, talking about, description. And then Smaranam will naturally arise. Because as you realize the absolute truth, you realize something which is very nectarine. So what is tasteful, your consciousness will naturally go in that direction. Because that's why we're accepting and rejecting. We're accepting and rejecting on two bases. I don't want suffering and I want pleasure. I'm going to the dentist to avoid the pain. I don't like the dentist, but he's stopping the pleasure. I'm going on holiday to Vasisht to enjoy the fresh air in the mountains. So that's how we're always deciding, to avoid displeasure and to accept and increase pleasure. So this is natural within the soul. The soul is Anandamoy Vyasat, Krishna is Anandamoy Vyasat. So we are also pleasure-seeking. Krishna is ecstatic. He's increasing the pleasure of the living entities. So we also have that feeling, I want to improve, right? But people try to improve in the material world. Oh, I'm a millionaire, now I want to be a billionaire, now I want to have 5 billion, and they try to improve materially. But in the spiritual world, this impetus to improve is natural to the living entity because it's from Krishna. Krishna is not static, he's ecstatically expanding and increasing. So therefore, when we realize Krishna through sadhana bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, then our mind naturally goes in that direction and our soul starts to blossom. And at the high point of blossom, we develop, our swarup becomes realized. The swarup, our spiritual form, is lying within the soul, just like a tree is within the seed. When you put good water and give sunlight to the seed, then the tree will grow from the seed. So the Swarup, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem, Sadhakavanai, Shravanadi, Sudachitte, Shravanadi, hearing and chanting and all the 9 processes, that awakens, Sudachitte, purifies the consciousness, Kride Uday. And then the Swarup, our relationship with Krishna, awakens. So the search for knowledge in the knowledge in the last 6 chapters of Gita, they are in the direction of bhakti. This is Shravanam. We're hearing the glories of Krishna, and it is expanding our bhakti. So that is the purpose. Just like karma is useless without being offered to the Supreme Lord, so to gain knowledge, we want to improve our bhakti with more insight. So that's what this 13th chapter is doing. We'll have the 3 modes of material nature, the divine and demonic. Krishna will give so much knowledge. And then in the Upanishad, just as a final word, there's one verse. Sambhutim cha vinasam cha yastad vedo bhayam saha vinasena mritum tirtva sambhutyam mritam ashnute. One should know perfectly well about the personality of Godhead and His transcendental name, form, qualities and pastimes, as well as the temporary material creation. So you should know about Krishna, how the spiritual world works, and you should also know how the material works, with its temporary demigods, men and animals. When one knows these, how the spiritual world works, how the material world works, where did it go? Yes. He surpasses death and the ephemeral cosmic manifestation with it. And in the eternal kingdom of God, he enjoys his eternal life of bliss and knowledge. Right? So this is also the same point that Krishna is making here. When you read the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll see these basic idea. So through knowledge of the spiritual world and the material world, through the knowledge of the Supreme Person and how the material world operates, by knowing these things, you become liberated, because that knowledge defeats illusion. And so therefore one performs duty in this world, as Krishna says here, whatever your present position, you still do work to maintain your body and contribute nicely to the temple or look after your family. But your consciousness now is seeing all your duties and your material activities in relationship to the Supreme Lord. And so then you become liberated. And then Krishna says, he's sure to attain me, you see. So the knowledge, this spiritual knowledge, this spiritual realization unlocks the door to the spiritual world. So thank you all very much. Any question? And what should we do when we're gathering knowledge? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And always remember, I was listening to the lecture of Prabhupada, he says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. Prabhupada talked on this point, that we shouldn't chant Hare Krishna like Hare Krishna, we should chant Priti Purvakam. You know, just like we offer a nice prasadam or bhoga to the Supreme Lord. We say, oh Krishna, here's some nice mango, here's some nice apple. Please accept. I give from my heart to you. That is Priti Purvakam. So when we chant, we should remember to chant, oh Supreme Lord, you've given me this life, you've given me existence, you've given me this knowledge, so I'm chanting with love and affection. And then our chanting will become very powerful. We shouldn't chant, Prabhupada says, like a parrot. You know, a parrot you can train to teach, or to speak rather. So you may get a parrot that can chant Hare Krishna. So, but he's not going to develop love of God. Maybe he will, it's possible. But, so prakṛtiṁ. And same thing, when we study, we should, it's bhajan, we should study with prakṛtiṁ. Look at the Leela of Radha and Krishna. Oh, look at Mother Yashoda. She loves Krishna so much. We should try to get some rasa. We should try to get some rasa. That's what I'm saying. The jnani doesn't understand that. He's thinking, oh, knowledge, very good. I'm very intelligent. Now I know everything. But the devotee is thinking, just see what it's like in the spiritual world. So that is prem, that is prem bhav, this anukulyena, affectionate mood towards Krishna. And that is the difference between material and spiritual. In the spiritual world, everyone has this prem bhav. They're all affectionate to Krishna and all Krishna's devotees. But in the material world, everyone is thinking,
Actually, modes are working. Modes.
Excuse me?
I have one doubt too.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, the modes are working on modes. Three modes are working on the soul. Want to please Krishna, if you want to chant in midday or somewhere in rooms. Heavy GD is coming. Heavy GD is coming. Heavy heat.
Heat, yeah.
That time the modes are not that we are Rajotama mixing and not chant Prakṛtiṁ.
Yeah, the body, yeah, that's why we should take care of health. Prabhupada once had a sign in his room, you know, health, sadhana, service. So our priority is to keep good health so that when it's hot or when it's cold, our body is strong enough so that we can study and chant nicely. But no matter how strong or healthy your body is, of course, the heat is difficult. So therefore we just have to tolerate. We have to tapasya. Just like a mountain. If you want to climb a mountain, you know, you're going to you're not going to float to the top. So tapa, a little austerity. You see, the materialist also. One time I remember I was going to Delhi in a taxi, and we were going into Delhi, and it was morning. So everyone was hanging off the bus, you know, hanging out the door. You could 3-4 people with their heads out the window. You know, the bus was made for maybe 50 people, but maybe there's 150 people on the bus. So this is great tapasya, is it not? They're going to work in the factory in very uncomfortable condition, and then they're jumping back on the bus in the evening. So this material world, in the material world, tapasya. So that is something we should understand. Lord Brahma, he performed tapasya to realize the absolute truth. So Prahlad Maharaj, he had difficulties. Queen Kunti had difficulties, great difficulties. So it is, we can't expect everything to just be, you know, luxury. I'm sure you don't, but so when difficulties come, we should take shelter like Queen Kunti. You know, he said, let the difficulties come again, because they remind us to remember you and your lotus feet. So that is the correct reaction to problems in the material world. That we realize, yes, what is that verse? Attain anukampatam Damana, right? That is one of Lord Brahma's verses. It says that the person who suffers the inconveniences of this material life in their present condition, but still offers obeisances to the Supreme Lord, he inherits the Supreme Lord, just like a faithful son inherits the property of the father. You see? So as long as we have this body, there will be inconveniences. But we should be careful to keep the body healthy. Good diet, exercise, no overeating, sleeping early, getting up, drinking good water, and then, now I'm fresh in the morning, so I'll chant. But if we have to take rest, we have to do that. Because the perfection is in the endeavor. You understand? In our attempt. Even though we may not be chanting Gayatri properly, sometimes our mind goes here, our mind goes there. We still chant Gayatri, right? Because the perfection is we're trying to chant better. Like we're chanting every day. So we're trying to chant with pretty purvakamma, but if the mind goes here or there, we don't think, oh, I am not chanting properly, I'll stop. You understand? So, by trying, that is our tapasya. Like at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Narada Muni, he learned from the Bhakti Vedantas how to meditate on Vishnu, and then he would meditate every evening. So he was sitting, and then Vishnu appeared to him. And so this is Krishna. And then he told Narada, well, you can't see me again now. He appeared and gave instruction. But I have appeared to encourage you so that you will work on your sadhana. So Krishna often appears to the living entity to encourage him. He gives him. But then we work at our sadhana. We try to purify our consciousness step by step.
This verse, it is said, we have to understand the material nature. We have to understand the material nature. The philosophy considers the material nature and the living entity and the interaction of three modes.
And the super soul, yeah, the three modes.
And what you are reading from the ISKCON, you have to understand the Supreme Lord.
Yes. Yeah, well, both are there. Well, this is stressing. The first thing we have to understand is the material nature, because we're in the material nature. But Krishna is saying we have to understand the super soul. In the previous verse he says, super soul appears to be divided but is not. He's the upadrasta, he's the anumanta, he's the pamitta. So first you start from your position, the material conditioning, and then as you become more purified, then you study Bhagavatam and the Krishna Leela, Chaitanya Leela, the Rasa Shastra of Rupa Goswami, the 6 Goswamis. You understand? So the first step is to understand, yes, super soul, that is spirit. Then the modes and the conditioning effect of material nature, the laws of karma. So we start from our situation. Just like at the beginning I was explaining that Arjuna was told, hey Arjuna, do your duty, but do it as an offering. Right? So that's the first start, right? You're a doctor, be a good doctor and offer that endeavor to the Supreme Lord. You're a businessman, be an honest businessman and offer your endeavor to the Supreme Lord, right? You're a mother, be a good mother, but offer that hard work bringing up a child as an offering to the Supreme, right? That's the first step. Starting, that is not exactly Jaiva Dharma, that is not realization of Swarup, but it's beginning the seva bhav, the attitude of service. You understand? So the attitude of service has to be started from our position. So the material knowledge has to be, we understand the material world first, how it works. We know the laws of karma, just like Krishna told Arjuna in the beginning, he said, you're not the body, Arjuna. He didn't say, Arjuna, actually you have a form as a gopi in the spiritual world. He didn't say that. He said, no, you're not the body. Right? So, that's the beginning idea of the soul. He didn't say, actually you're meant to dance in the Ras Leela in the transcendental world. Arjuna, why are you worried about this battle? He said, no, Arjuna, you're not the body. So first understand the material situation that we as the soul are in. Understand how the laws of karma, the modes, how super soul, everything. Then we can progress. Just like super soul is coming from the spiritual platform, so we can go up the super soul to Mahavishnu, to the Chatuvyuha, to Baladev, to Krishna, you see. Right? But first understand the situation that you are in. And then that will throw off the material illusion. You see? Light defeats darkness. Okay, we'll finish at this point. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada, Bhagavad-Gita, Vrindavan Dham Ki.